Welcome to A Game of Ice and Fire, a video series devoted to a Song of Ice and Fire wargame by Cool Mini or Not. We cover all aspects of the hobby with tactics and list build videos, painting tutorials of varying levels, and battle reports. This is the second Rob Stark list that I discussed in my tactics video. The Kranigman did not show up, so I was not able to pilot the weird shenanigan list. So if you want to learn more about this list, just find that video and it'll go into deep detail of what we're playing and why we're playing it. Our Night's Watch player is still feeling out a few things. The Jon Snow and Veterans seems to be a pretty good staple for them. They decided to run more bodies, less attachments with more NCUs this time around, and it's being backed with Jeor Mormont and Bowen Marsh. We decided to play Winds of Winter for this battle report. This is the one where you get your 5 objectives like normal, but they don't really count for anything unless the secret mission deck that you have tells you to. So you have your 2 secret missions per player, and then the one that gets revealed overall to everyone, and then this ends at 10 victory points, and there's no victory through combat on this one, so it's just getting points from those secret mission cards. For Stark deployment, I kept Brendan and Tully and the Outriders off the table. The Bowmen are taking up the position directly across from the Palisade, which sounds a little counterintuitive, but I want to try and use that Palisade to block the charges that are going to be coming from that bottom side. Rob Stark's running up the middle, the Flayed Men are taking the flank, and Greywind's kind of on that flank too. So I want to control a lot of what happens on the upper portion of the table, and the Stark Bowmen are just going to utilize that Palisade as a safety net almost. For the Night's Watch player, I am very close to being able to record 2 people now. I have my mixer, but I am 1 microphone cord short. I was just an idiot and didn't order an extra one. So that's on the way and it's coming soon, but I didn't want to delay it with this video. So I know my Night's Watch player wants to try and experiment with the Builder Scorpion crews. I wasn't super excited for them because I think they're pretty good at killing up Flayed Men if they get punched into something, but otherwise it's a very symmetrical looking deployment for my opponent. There's 2 ranged threats with the Trackers and the Builder Scorpion in the middle there. Ghost can kind of go where it needs to get to the secret missions that it has to. Jon Snow and the Vets are running up the table in the middle because that's what they need to do, and the Sworn Brothers are handling flanks. We did position terrain in the traditional book fashion, so I had put down the weirwood tree just out of habit. I didn't want to get the middle of the table gunked up with any messy terrain, so putting that there, since I don't rely on panic checks and my morale's pretty decent, I'm fine with that being there. I also put down the bog because I did want to control some movement on some portion of the table. My opponent has an unnatural obsession with Palisades and slapped it down to try and just find a place to put down some movement control, but when he had seen that I was putting some difficult terrain on the table, they had matched suit with the corpse pile at the top of the screen there. Positioning terrain is still something that I think we're both trying to get used to, but it seems like with Starks, I always want a weirwood tree on the table so I can have some freeform movement in the middle of the table and then try and put down some limiting terrain on the sides. It just seems to shake out that way each time. This battle report did end up going a little bit longer than I would expect people to want to watch this for, so I sped it up twice the speed as normal, so bear with me if I skip over a few things here and there, but I didn't want to have you sit here for an hour and watch this. Sansa just went down on the tactics board right away, got the Flayed Men moving up. I think that they're probably one of the more important ones right now for me to get some better positioning on, just so I can set the line of engagement a little bit further back for my opponent. We haven't drawn any of the secret mission cards, and that's another thing I have to apologize for, as I'm starting to learn with this game having so many components that I really do need a secondary camera setup to keep track of the cards and mission things that happen throughout this game. And I did not realize while I was lining up the shot that I wasn't going to have the top of the tactics board in view. So again, I apologize for that, but I feel like I am getting better through my mistakes on this one. So sooner or later, you'll have some high-class battle reports. But for right now, this is what you get. Now, I think I mentioned this in the deployment part of the game, but those Sworn Brothers are kind of going right where I want them to, with where I'm positioning or where the palisade got positioned. So my opponent did throw that down, so any problems that happen with this are totally his fault. And he picked the side too, so there's that on top of just throwing the palisade down. So my idea is that the Sworn Brothers are going to have to walk around the palisade, and now the Rangers, although they care about it a little less, are in the bog, so they're going to be slowed down a bit too by trying to get to the bowmen, and the bowmen will just be able to take the position behind that palisade and just start launching arrows with no regard. And they do march forward so that they can try and take that position where they need to and influence the table with a lot of firepower. So I think my opponent's just trying to figure out which position they want on the tactics board, because I did recently take the tactics board position. I forget what that's called. It's the missive is what I'll always know it as. But I just got that to draw a couple more cards and got some cool things. I think I opened up in this game with Tactical Regroup, Swift Advance, Devastating Blow, and then off the 2 cards that I drew, I ended up getting Direwolf's Fervor and Winter is Coming, I believe, or The North Remembers, one of those 2. So a pretty good set of cards for Robb Stark to be working with early, and that's why Ghost is a little bit frightening for me right now. I should be able to just touch Ghost and watch it die at a 3+ save, but I do not want Ghost getting onto my Flayed Men or even maybe Robb Stark, so that I can't target them with the tactics cards. That's going to be a real bummer for me if that ends up happening. And I do not like 2 auto wounds going on my Flayed Men while there's a Scorpion Builder crew sitting directly across from my Flayed Men, ready to open up on them. So I think my opponent's just putting down NCUs to put them down at this point. There's no real benefit that he's going to get out of them, because the only positions that are open, I guess there's the crown position that might come up, but there's nothing to heal and there's no reason to attack because he can't get engaged with anything this early. Sworn Brothers on the top are running in. They're looking to try and get into the mix with some Flayed Men. And Grey Wind I'm positioning Grey Wind just behind the Weirwood so that I can put Grey Wind where I need to if the opportunity comes up. But as I stated in my tactics video, I'm not looking to apply Grey Wind in a specific place. I'm not actively looking for that target, but I am being open to the possibility of Grey Wind unpacking into something and doing some significant work there, or at least applying that vulnerable token in a place where it's going to really benefit me. And the Builder crew runs up. I've always had mixed thoughts on the Builder crew. Like most people when it first came out, I thought it was a hot pile of trash. And as I've started to see it played more and play against it more, I've started to respect it a little bit more, especially with the cards that Night's Watch has available to it. If they ever get an NCU that lets you put out extra attacks, those Scorpion crews are going to turn into little machine guns. But they are nasty into the right targets. So our big revealed objective for the round is, I believe it's the one where you get +1 victory point every time you charge something. And I end up revealing the secret mission that says I pick an objective And by the end of the turn, if I have an unengaged unit on that objective, I score 3 points. And I have chosen the one that the flayed men are stuck on right now. My opponent reveals the card that says if you forfeit the activation on an NCU, you gain 1 point. And then he also reveals the card that says if you sacrifice or forfeit the activation on an NCU, you also get a point. So if my opponent had 10 units, they could probably close out the game right now. I don't think there's anything that's stopping them from doing that. But with only having 8 units, it means that I'll get this turn to kind of run the table the way I want to. I do bring Brendan Tully, the Vanguard Outrider, and the Stark Outriders onto the table on my opponent's side. Now, with our backgrounds being in War Machine, we were aware of the ambush. When I had explained it to him, I said, yeah, it's like ambush. But given the nuance of the mission and how many things you need to pay attention to, it had just slipped his mind. So Brendan Tully is an unwelcome surprise for my opponent. Because I don't think, other than maybe turning, because it's kind of a problem, right? The way that they're positioned up there. The Sworn Brothers can't turn around to get the charge on them if the charge comes up, because then that just means I can move the Vanguard or the Outriders lower and make sure that they get the flank there, or they get close to the flayed men getting into them. So my opponent decides to minimize his losses by just pivoting the Sworn Swords around and making it so that I don't get a flank or rear charge with those Stark Outriders. And since he has to do that, it also gives me the opportunity to get one of the best things ever with this army, and that's the maneuver tactics position on a turn where I am not the active player, or I mean like the first player. I don't have the crown or priority. So I decide to go a little bit ham on this charge, and I play Devastating Impact or Devastating Blow onto the Outriders with their charge from that Sansa gives them from that tactics position. I go in. I just wanted to make sure that I could wipe out as much of these guys as I possibly could. I'm still kind of playing the game as though Aemon and Craster are there, because when those two are in a Night's Watch list, this list that I'm playing would just struggle so much into it, because I just don't have the amount of attacks to carve through all that healing, which makes my Night's Watch game pretty interesting when you look at it from a pairing perspective, because I feel like Great John's just going to be the one to put into those, because he has like the volume of attacks and the ability to cut down armor. But this list, you really have to bully the table in order to get a leg up on an opponent like a Night's Watch player. So that attack does a ton of damage, removes 4 bodies, and then the Sworn Brothers are unfortunate enough to fail their morale test by 2. So we take 6 bodies off with that 1 activation, and that is a super huge win for me in my opinion. So my opponent just goes through and starts sacrificing a couple activations, or starts sacrificing activations to gain points. The Rangers, which the Rangers being the ones that received the forfeit to get the extra point, is just tickling me pink right now, because I think they're the ones that mostly are going to be able to threaten the Stark Bowmen. So the Stark Bowmen then, they activate and get targeted by Swift Advance, and they just get up enough to bring Ghost into range. So now they're taking their normal activation, and Ghost hasn't activated this turn, so the Crannogman Warden's Opportunist goes off. So they haven't shifted, because the Swift Advance is what brought them into distance. So they get to roll 10 dice and re-roll their misses. So I end up getting 7 hits out of that one, and I'm looking at vaporizing this dog hard right now. Like, somebody better call the vet, because that dog needs to be put down right now. I just threw every single arrow in Winterfell at this dog, And now we're searching for Ghost's card to get the armor save, or not the armor save, but the defense save. My opponent just misplaced it, so Ghost has got a 3+, and somehow just shunts every single one of them off. They're like doing some Matrix moves over there, and it's a bummer. Like I was like, let me show you the raw power of Stark Bowman and a Rob Stark army, even though Swift Advance can be played by anyone and they're just good with that card anyways. Unfortunately, I did not get to show you that because a 3+ save, I guess, is about the same as being invincible. So who'd have thought? I move on from this one. I'm like, yep, that dog is tough, and I just continue with my turn like a normal day, because that's all you can do. You get these weird tilty dice experiences, and you can't let them influence your mind state in the game, especially when you're playing a list like this where my output does not come from the presence on the table. It comes a lot from being able to abuse this maneuver game that I'm trying to play. Like, I only have 4 actual units in this list. It is really tiny. So when I'm staring down the barrel of 6 different, or 5 different units, but then there's Ghost and then 2 more NCUs on top of that, it's not that I'm threatened by being out activated. It's more so that since all my points are wrapped up into mostly 2 packages, it's quite painful. Or it would be quite painful to lose one of them. So the Flayed Men, I can't remember if I had stated this, but one of the secret mission cards that I had, yeah, I did because I revealed it early. So the Flayed Men move up just enough to get barely off that objective. What I want to do is use the Flayed Men to body block that objective, and then have Greywind come and take it over so that my opponent can't get into it, because the Scorpion crew isn't getting there, and the Veteran crew isn't going to get there because they're going to crash into the Flayed Men first. The only one that could possibly make the charge to screw that up for me is Ghost, and that's a long bomb charge that Ghost has to make. So I don't think that it's beneficial for my opponent to try and go for it. So I think that I've got these 3 victory points pretty much wrapped up in that activation there. Much like what happened, I think, in the second battle report, where some Sworn Brothers blocked me from getting onto an objective that Ghost was scoring. It just seems like a good tactic to deploy when you're trying to get those points. Use a good unit to block a wolf and just have them score. So the Sword in the Darkness comes down on the Veterans, or at least I believe it's Sword in the Darkness, and I kind of layer a bunch of garbage on my opponent. I trigger Rob Stark's order to make them automatically suffer a disorderly charge, because I don't think anyone else is charging this turn. I mean, I could have saved it for Ghost maybe, but I also play superior positioning, so the Night's Watch player has to throw 2 dice and drop the highest, which I had kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I didn't build it up to be a super great card in the tactics discussion video, but when it happens, it is amazing. And those Vanguard, or the Veterans, they needed a 9 total to get in, and they ended up only getting a 3 out of it. So I should reverse that and make the math right. So they were within 9 inches, but not within 8, and the dice that they rolled that they got to keep just barely, it put them at the 8-inch mark. So they stopped just outside of their successful charge. So that was a really good deal for me. Now the Flayed Men aren't having any, like, they're not getting sundering from those guys or anything. So the 2+ save probably means they're going to make it out okay. But not having to take those attacks is definitely better for sure. And all I had, I layered those 2 things on there, but the order wasn't doing anything else. So it looks like Ghost ran over to the edge of the Flayed Men just so I could stop, so he could stop me abusing tactics cards with them. I did get a ton of points this turn. I got the 3 points for scoring that objective with with Grey Wind. I got 1 point for charging the Vanguard, or not Vanguard, the Outriders into the Sworn Brothers, and then I got 3 points because the other card that I had was control the Missive and the Maneuver Tactics position, which I did. So it was a nice, cool 7 points for that first round of scoring. The objective we throw up now is, I'm trying to remember which one it was because I can't quite recall. Oh, I believe this was the turn where we flipped the main objective being the one that you get 4 points for it if you have an unengaged unit in your enemy's deployment zone. So if you're doing the math at home, that means I'm set to get 11 points this turn if things pan out the way that I hope they do, because Brendan Tully's unit is very much in the back corner. There's no restriction on where he can come on the table. It's just that entire side on the short range. So if I want to start in my opponent's deployment zone, boom, I can go there. At least I'm pretty sure that is the way it works, because if I cheated my opponent, I'll feel so bad. So it looks like the veterans finally got their charge off. So they're going into the Flayed Men with no special anything on them. They're just doing damage. Oh no, sorry. I reversed the order on that one. That was the Flayed Men making their charge. and doing massive amounts of damage to that unit, which is really important because the other card that I have in my hand is, because I only drew 1 card this turn because I'm not sure I completely understand how many cards you're supposed to draw in this mission, because I thought it said you draw 1, but then up to 2. I just have to go back and read them. So I played it the way that I figured it worked without having to dive deep into the rules and waste time doing it. So I just drew 1 card, and that 1 card was, if you destroy your opponent's commander, you get 4 victory points out of it. So I have 2 ways to slam this game out of the park with the way that last attack went. And the Flayed Men did panic the Sworn Brothers up on top, just in case when I do inflict a panic test, I can make them re-roll it if they end up passing it, and maybe get a couple more of them if I need. So one of Jon Snow's cards came down, and I believe this is the one where he gets to go find one from the discard pile. Is that what it is? I can't quite remember. I apologize. I should know these cards like the back of my hand now, since all I ever do is play. I think it was For the Watch, maybe. I think we're getting into a discussion here about how it's actually supposed to play out. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. I think it was a card that one of the tactics cards that let him pull a card from his discard pile, and he was trying to pull back Jon Snow's commander card, but the card only lets you pick up a vow. So we just got into a small discussion on how that was supposed to work. I do play another Swift Advance because I pulled another one, and I move Robb Stark's unit up to get the flank on the veterans, and I'm kind of ignoring a lot of the tactics board shenanigans that I could be pulling off, because I want to kill not Robb Stark. I want to kill Jon Snow and get those 4 victory points if I can just control that. So we did pop Stark Fury off, and we hit with, it should have been all the attacks, because I forget that I get +1 to hit with Stark Fury. So tons of saves that need to go at my opponent here. He only loses 1 veteran though, and after this activation had passed, I realized that when I go into the flank, I have -1, or he has -1 to his save, but I had forgotten about it, so I just didn't count it. And we didn't go to try and fix the game state. And I know that some of you are probably flipping out right now because we did something that wasn't right either. So my opponent played, I believe it's the It Shall Not End to My Death. It was Stand United Brothers. And he had asked me when he played it, do you want to cancel this? And me, just in commander kill mode, had said, yes, I want to try and cancel this. So I started ticking the dice down on Varys and saying, okay, well, I'm going to try and cancel that card. We got down to the last roll and I realized, oh wait, I can't cancel tactics cards, just NCU abilities and tactics board positions. So we walked by that. And on this one, Jayor took up the combat position on the table, and I spent all 3 of Varys' tokens then, legitimately, to cancel the ability to make a unit fight. I think my opponent was attempting to try and get some extra wounds on either the Flayed Men or the Vanguard Outriders, but Varys, I probably didn't need to throw all those tokens at it. I probably should have saved it for something a little more important, but it is what it is. So that was I'm not sure what it was that triggered the attack on the Outriders. The maneuver position on the board is still open, so I believe that might have been their normal activation, and they just got a couple extra kills, 2 of them, out of the Sworn Brothers. And now the Builder crew, my opponent and I were going through what the penalties are for shooting into combat and if he could do it, which is one of the things that I don't think is easy to figure out with the starter sets. I mean, the Rangers are in there, but ranged combat isn't something that's focused early on. So I had just told him, yeah, you can shoot, but you have your veterans suffer a morale test. So Robb Stark ends up taking heavy casualties from that Scorpion Builder crew, and we're not happy about it. At least I know that I have the if you kill the commander you get 4 victory points card, and that my opponent doesn't. I'm not sure if there are 2 of them in there, but I would be really bummed if we were going for the same thing and he got it and I didn't. It'd just be lame. So now I'm taking up the I think we took the tactics position with Sansa, and I was contemplating whether I was going to pop her ability or not, and I decided not to. I have a little bit more of the game to go, and I probably should have there, given that the 4 points. Now, I'm sorry, we play on a table that's like got a bunch of drawers underneath it, and I threw a die and it like ricocheted off the table and hit a Magic player like 30 feet away. It was intense, but it was an interesting experience. A few more vows come down. I think this one was the one where he can remove a condition or something like that. And now he's swinging into the rest of Robb Stark's unit. Or it could have been the sword that... the sword in the darkness. I can't recall. The Robb Stark's unit really screws his armor rolls, so the whole unit dies, but it does allow me to play the North Remembers. So I get to remove an activation token, and I remove the one that was off of the... I think I ended up removing the one off of the Flayed Men? No, Flayed Men haven't gone yet. This is, if you pay attention to any of the Facebook activity or the Song of Ice and Fire big Facebook page, you'll notice that I posted something about activation tokens. This whole thing is the reason why, because I couldn't remember which unit had the activation token removed off of it and which one was legitimately activating. So I think I pulled the activation token off of the Outriders. And then this is the Flayed Men making their normal activation. So they don't hit the greatest. and they lose just one veteran. Nothing too crazy. Once the flayed men get jammed in, it's not that they're bad, it's just the rerolls from the charge are really nice from them. And the Robb Stark list, or just Stark lists in general, allow you to get a lot of that. Robb Stark much more so. But they're just kind of flopping there into some veterans. Now the Sworn Brothers are trying to go for the objective that's public right now, the one that scores 4 points if you're in your enemy's deployment zone. I think my opponent forgets here, though, that the deployment zone on this mission is 6 inches and not 12, so it's a little bit of a futile effort, unless they've got cards in their hand, which I can't quite remember. So now I'm explaining to my opponent what I'm doing with the Outriders. I didn't want to go over there and move them and go through all these motions, but I retreat and heal D3 wounds, and then charge back in because it's their normal activation, or not their normal activation, but their North Remembers activation. And they, yeah, my opponent thought that they were the veterans that I was going into, but it was the Sworn Brothers, and I made him realize that correction. So he plays It Shall Not Die Until My Death, which is a bummer for me, but thankfully, as you can tell by the fist pumps, they did not pass their morale check. So the Vanguard veterans, the Vanguard Outriders move up and just reposition a little bit. I keep calling them Vanguard Outriders because they're Outriders with the Vanguard Outrider in them, but they are just plain old Outriders, and Brendan Tully's the Vanguard. So bear with me while I keep making that mistake probably multiple times in the video. So now the Ranger, things get a little funky here. The Ranger Hunters shoot, and I don't believe I have cover from the palisade, but a good portion of my base is obscured by the palisade, so I think I get cover here, but it doesn't matter a whole bunch because those Stark bowmen go down like crazy. They did not put on their metal shirts today. They just took a ton of casualties. But I need to review the cover rules, or if you know them better than I do, feel free to leave a comment below and let me know how to play the cover out in that scenario. So now you can see me being an idiot, and I'm letting that inner Baratheon hang out. I've just got blood in my eyes, and I'm going for this Scorpion Builder crew. And I didn't even know how many wounds they had when I charged in there, so I can't even say that I expected to kill them, because they could have had 8 wounds for all I know, and it would have just been a bad idea all around. I end up putting 4 wounds on them, which puts them 1 away from death, so I almost got lucky for making my bad mistake here. But now, given I've burned through my entire hand of tactics cards, and all of my NCUs are on the tactics board, I have no way to get those stupid Outriders out of that combat because I just decided to make a bad play. So I could have closed the game out on 11 points since they were out of combat and just, had a quick half-hour battle report for you. But I didn't. So now you get to watch me play the rest of this game lamenting my mistake. But Greywind does get to live a little bit of the dream here. Get some retribution. So Ghost kills one of the flayed men with their auto wounds, but then Greywind goes in there and shows him how it's done and kills Ghost without auto wounds. Like, I needed the one vulnerable reroll, but that's besides the point. Like, Greywind just tanked it. It was a decent run. So now Greywind's getting into the position to apply vulnerable in a couple different spots if I want to, so it's looking pretty good over there. This is I read this card way too fast. I didn't even look at the information that was on the top of the card. This is the one where, like, you nominate a unit or you nominate an enemy unit that kills a friendly unit, and then if you kill that enemy unit, you gain 2 victory points. There's a passage on the top of the card that says, if this is your open mission, discard it and get a new one. I decided to not pay attention to that and just kept it there and said, I guess the open scenario is dead this turn. So I scored 0 points that turn, I believe. And I'm pretty sure it was 0. Or I went to 9. This is just another thing that I need to keep track of. I'm like I said, I'm realizing that I need to really step up my data capturing game when it comes to recording these. And I think that just means getting a second camera to keep track of the few things that we play, so that there's no confusion and I can go through these and work with them again, or just not have to remember, So bear with me while I get all this stuff started. I think maybe in a battle report or two, we'll get 2 people commenting on this and everything will be fine. We'll have all the data there. It looks like the flayed men are getting attacked. They fail a couple saves and we go down to 1 rank remaining on them. They did get vulnerable as well, so that's where some of those casualties came from. But it's they're starting to break a little bit up there because they don't fall off that much, though. They go from 8 dice to 6, so it's not a big deal. But having the extra 2 dice is nice. It's helpful. They got some good attacks. So I'm not sure which tactics card got played, but it looks like somebody was taking a morale test or something. And now my opponent's just contemplating or trying to figure out how his cards work. And now he wants to just position the Sworn Brothers in the back so they can get a rear charge on the Stark Bowmen. So the Bowmen have basically lived out their use now, because I don't know. They still could do stuff. I'm not saying that they're trash right now or anything, but the Sworn Brothers had finally gotten to where they needed to go. Or it looks like they're at least lining up the charge. They had to march to get there. So I'm sorry about that. I jumped the gun. The Vanguard veteran, the Stark Outriders with Brendan Tully just kind of maneuver to take up a rear charge on the veterans. Yeah, I'm still pretty sure I scored 0 points last turn, and now we figure out that card is the way it is. So we pull another one, and I think it becomes just about the same in terms of dead, because it's the one where you score the mission. Nope, that's too much text for that. I think it's if you control board positions again, you gain 1 victory point or 3, depending on which spots you have. So the Sworn Brothers did get their charge into the Bowman and died horribly. So I think what's going on now is we're running out of activations and clipping through the turns a lot faster. So I slam Sansa down on the maneuver position here, and I do decide to utilize her ability to pull back. I feel like it was Devastating Blow, maybe. Or Sudden Charge. Not sure. So we end up getting 6 hits out of that one in the rear on the Vanguard, or the veterans. So that's probably why I keep calling these guys Vanguard veterans. I think they only pass 1 save or 0. So now it's just Jon Snow that's left. He's the last one in that unit. And now the Rangers are coming in to try and get a rear charge onto the Outriders. So now we're both kind of playing the maneuver game. Looks like my opponent took up the coin position on the tactics board to get some more units or more bodies back into that Vanguard unit. I end up putting out some condition for one reason or another, which I can't quite remember why. And it looks like they rolled a disorderly charge, so they make it, but they don't get their rerolls. And they only get 2 hits. I fail one of the wounds, so they take 1. Not a big deal. But then I have their retreat, where I can't remember if this was from a card or not, but when they get, oh no, it's just for their ability. When they get hit, they get to retreat, and then they restore wounds. So there's no way I can't restore the wound back or the unit back to full. So that's just another thing I haven't been able to unpack all game because they haven't been attacked. And my opponent was also very surprised about that. Gray one charges in. I know the move on that one looked funky, but with rolling that, I knew I could charge through my flayed men and I'd be fine. So 2 saves, 1 guy goes down. And I know that I feel like this is there's a secret mission card that I have in my hand or somewhere that's supposed to, I don't know, I can't remember. This is terrible. I really wish I could figure out which secret mission card it is that I'm holding on to right now. I do go up a point there, so I did something. It must have been you gain a victory point every time you attack an enemy from the rear or flank. That must have been what it was. And then I would have kicked up, yeah, because I would have kicked up 2 points there, and now I've got 1 victory point to go. But my opponent's sitting at 8 points now for what they've scored as well. I haven't been keeping great track of their secret missions either. This mission is such a pain in the butt to track if you're trying to record it. I know that for people who record their battle reports live and have the commentary with live video, it's way easier because it all happens at once. But I'm slowly realizing what I need to do to try and get this to be a little bit more functional and high quality. So I think this is a tactical regroup on the flayed men, so they back out, heal back their rank, and charge back into Jon Snow's unit. And the card that I drew this turn is kill an enemy unit that has not activated this turn. So Jon Snow's taken a ton of saves. It looks like we're throwing 10 saves at Jon Snow. I don't think he's going to make this one. And there's no, my opponent shows me that there's no tactics cards to try and heal Jon Snow back up or win him, or not win him, but get the morale check to get him back in. So that is the end of the game as I've reached 10 points, and thank you for bearing with this nightmare of a battle report to keep track of. There's so many moving parts to this mission, and there's just a lot of bookkeeping that I need to get up on in order to make this an enjoyable and solid experience for you. Well, I hope you enjoyed this bookkeeping dumpster fire of a battle report. If you do, subscribe to the channel to see more stuff in the future. Hit the bell notification to let YouTube know that you want to know when we post new stuff. Like the video if you like it. Comment if you have anything to say about the Rob Stark list. And remember that we have a Facebook page now for Big Top Gaming, and I post a lot of memes, thoughts, and other things here and there. Soon to be polls in the future, all sorts of stuff. Who knows what's going to come out there. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this battle report, and I look forward to making the next one for you.